Yeah, so I want to do a Q&A, just kind of take a break from the presentations and kind of be overload of information the last couple of weeks. So I wanted to kind of answer questions that people might have or people who might not be able to attend these chats. So I got the Discord questions. If you guys got questions, I mean, I can talk about this stuff all day and night. So I'm prepared to be here for as long as needed. So the first question from the Discord was on inflammation. Inflammation's got like a bad rep for some reason. It's like this. It's like inflammation and stress are like a negative thing, I feel, and we want to reduce inflammation. And then it's like the body doesn't do anything without reason. And it's kind of like we got to reduce cortisol. Like cortisol plays a role. Same with inflammation, and inflammation is essential. It's our body's way of defending itself against viruses, bacteria. When you injure yourself, inflammation is the first thing that your immune system does to start the healing process. But for some reason, we were taught to rest it, ice it, compression, and elevate it, and just we always want to reduce inflammation. So there's two types of inflammation. There's acute and there's chronic. Acute is when it happens right away. So if I roll my ankle swells up, that inflammation is it swells, it's painful, it's red. That's like a cast to avoid. So you can't move it, right? So that the inflammation is integral. But what does ice do? It reduces inflammation. It reduces swelling. And then we get this false sense of security that our ankle has more mobility than it actually does. So the common medical term is itis, right? I got tendinitis, I got this itis, I got that itis. It just means inflammation. What doctors or PTs, if you're a PT watching this, and I'm not a doctor, okay, but what they tend to do is they say inflammation is, you have tendinitis, which is inflammation of a tendon. They'll say, I'll just rest. The question becomes, what's causing the patellar tendinitis, inflammation of the patella tendon? What's causing the patella to be inflamed? Who's pissing it off? So whenever there's inflammation, I'm always like, who's pissing the body off? Why is it upset? Inflammation, again, remember, signs and symptoms are just a communication thing. It's your body's way of communicating with you. Here it comes, Sean. Is your environment. Something's going on in your world or your environment that your body's just trying to be like, hey, something's going on. Mental or physical. I feel the same way about like emotions, anxiety, depression. It's just your body's way of communicating with you like, hey, there might be something going on. You might want to look into this. If not, it's going to continue to get worse. And you can either listen and work with us, or we'll, put you in debilitating pain. Now, a chronic inflammation is a byproduct of a chronic exposure to this. It's this weird, it's kind of cool. Chronic inflammation is like, it's continuously destroying the body and healing itself at the same time. And we see there's a ton of factors: environmental, food. It's mainly the things that are surrounding us. I don't know. I think there was a diet question in regards to inflammation, but yeah, it's eating shitty food. It's not protein, carbs, or fat. It's mainly like things with 30 ingredients, like some of the foods some of us may have eaten this weekend, like me, like Doritos. Like there's 30 ingredients in a bag of Doritos. There's no reason to eat them, but they are delicious, right? So it may cause some inflammation because it's just not supposed to be in the body. And your body's immune system we have to attack what that is. So yeah, inflammation is great. We need inflammation because it tells us a story. It tells us like what's going on at a physiological level. It's just that our medical kind of looks at inflammation like a bad thing, and it's not. Especially from a movement standpoint. I know Mel had a question on injuries, and so did Russell. Like when there's inflammation, again, who's pissing the ankle off? Who's pissing the foot off, right? And we'll look at like the knee. Does the foot have a full function? Does the ankle have a full function? Hips, pelvis, like do those joints all have ranges of motion and are they strong? Inflammation is a byproduct of someone else pissing it off. Question is who's pissing it off, right? The rice thing I think the guy who came up with the rice came out recently and said like, we don't want to do that anymore. So like if you have an injury, like if you sprain your ankle, my first thing is we got to move it. We got to move it because we got to promote blood flow to the area. Inflammation is going to let you know how much you can move that range. So if you only have a little bit of range of motion, that's fine, because the less you move it, the more you avoid that movement, the brain's going to associate those movements as like, hey, we got to avoid those. So the sooner you can move from an injury, the better. Obviously, if you need surgery, that's a different discussion. But there is some research that shows like ACLs will actually regenerate. It's kind of fascinating, but the body's really cool. But anyways, if you have inflammation and swelling and pain and heat, like listen to it. The question is who's causing the inflammation. All right. So, all right. Any questions on inflammation? We're all here. If you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll just move to the next one. Sean, you're here. I would like your input on these questions too. So the question was pushing past PRs. They're physically struggling, mental or physical. So this is something we all encounter in, especially if we're pursuing strength sports, is pushing past PRs. There's 3 reasons you don't make a lift. You get hurt, you're not strong enough, or you just mentally aren't there. Yeah, you just got to get stronger. You got to put yourself in positions to have different wins. So if you're struggling with a back squat, for instance, like go do other squatting variations is typically what I do with my clients, and those squatting variations will hit weaknesses. It's kind of like what we do with like concurrent and conjugate training. So we kind of take their focus off the main movement. If it's a back squat, and we'll go front squat, Zercher squat, box squat, like give them something else to focus on. Okay, cool. We're going to come back to the back squat and find just other ways to have wins in your training. What's the PR for? Why is the PR important? If we can attach something to why a PR is important to you, right? It's any other goal, right? Why is the goal important? Is it just to lift more weight? It's so the mentally part, like that's a tough one. Sean, I don't know, you work with more lifters now than I do. So how do you deal with like the mental struggles of pushing past PRs?
Currently dealing with it right now, trying to figure out how to actually be better about that.
Okay.
Because I have specifically 2 female lifters that are very much so in their head, where if like something feels a little heavier than normal, they're like, oh great, everything's going to go terrible. So
yeah,
trying to figure that out.
Like something I do with my female, I mean, all my lifters is like, especially ones in person, is I'm not going to put a weight on a bar I don't think you can do. It's going to feel heavy, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. Like I'm never as a coach going to put you in a position to lose. I don't, Heather, I think you asked this question. I don't know if you're working with a coach, but the mental aspect, like I don't know. It's just, it's putting in the reps. It's a matter of doing it. Is it a technique? And I said the 3 things why you fail. It's you weren't strong enough, your technique sucked, or you got injured. Is it a technique issue? Do you need to get stronger? Is it glutes and hamstrings? Is it core? Is it quads? It depends what the PR is. Is it recovery? There's a lot of aspects other than just the squat. I'm just using the squat as an example. For Paul, like your deadlifts, with deadlifts, we see if you're a conventional puller, I always like to pull sumo, right? Let's take some time off of conventional. You get strong in the positions you train, which means that your body finds the easiest way to achieve it. So sometimes you got to do some other things to get the joints stronger in different positions so your body can focus on that and then come back to that movement. Sean, go ahead.
I've also seen a lot of success lately with shifting away from like a 1 rep PR to like a 2, 3, or 5.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And also you have to understand, like your PR for the day is going to be different every day. That's people get, last week I squatted 360, but like a month later you can barely move 315. Like there's a lot of factors that play into that. That's why Jim Wendler does with 531. Let's take 93% of our 1 rep max and use that as our working. And that's why I like conjugate and concurrent is like, we kind of rotate those main movements so we can get PRs in different lifts and also hit our weaknesses and get stronger from different aspects. So Paul, I get it, man. I was stuck at 600 for 2 years. And when I competed, I think it was APF Nationals, the guy handling me, so they were using kilo plates, so I didn't know the conversions. So I told my handler, just put my weight in, don't tell the announcer to announce the weight, and I just went and pulled, right? So I didn't know the weight. It was like a barrier. Like once you got 580, I got 6 plates on, I couldn't get past 585. My handler put 630 on the bar and pulled it easily. So I understand that mentally draining thing. It could be, again, technique, injury, weakness, you're not strong enough. It's something. Hey, Paul, shoot me some videos either on Discord or Instagram of your deadlifts, and we can kind of refine those or see what's going on from that. Anybody watching this, if you have any lifts, like shoot them to me or Sean. Like, let's look at your lifts. Like technique's big. All right. So next question was safely pushing past hesitation to continue to grow in overall strength. Again, is what's the goals? Are we powerlifting, right? You have to push. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. Like that's just the nature of the game. Like what you're asking your body to do isn't normal. Like our bodies aren't meant to lift that kind of weight. We just weren't designed that way. So that's why there's more people who run than lift heavy pounds. Like how many people do you know ran a 5K this past weekend, but how many people do you know can pull 600, 700, 800 pounds? They're two different numbers. And I don't know if that's a good analogy or what, but like just lifting heavy is not natural. And there is a mental component, and you have to learn how to just check out and be present in your training. I also recommend a good coach, because like we always stand in our way. Like our personal mind is the mountain before us. And I think that's what causes us to hesitate, is we get in our own way. When you have a coach or a training partner or a training group, I don't know, these new lifters, they lift on their own, they put their headphones in, they don't have a group or a coach. It's very different than how I came up. But like if you have a coach who's like, just shut the fuck up and go lift, like just get out of your way. You can't hesitate. And I understand if you have injuries, Son, I don't know what you think.
I mean, I 100% recommend having a coach. While I am certified for powerlifting and weightlifting, I still hired a weightlifting coach. Mm-hmm. Because if he puts it on paper, I'm going to be like, well, that's what I'm doing today. So versus if I'm doing it myself, I could be that day where it's like not feeling it, want to be lazy, or like, oh, things aren't going well. But if I'm paying a coach, he puts it on paper, like, cool, that's what I have to do.
Yeah, I mean, I moved to Columbus, Ohio, because that's where Westside was and that's where Elite was, and I wanted to learn the science of strength. So I surrounded my training group, like the tree that I was surrounded by was like my resume as far as coaching tree goes is up there, because I wanted to learn and I needed to be surrounded by that. And again, the powerlifters I see in the gym today, they don't have crews anymore. There's no groups. It's very individual. It's become almost like an individual sport. I don't know how it is out in California, but here in the Midwest, it's almost.
I think a lot of it is like quote unquote team based now, like because online's grown so much for powerlifting.
Okay.
At least USAPL. I don't know too much about the other federations because I don't spend that much time dealing with them. But like USAPL definitely has grown. Like there's a shit ton of online coaches. They all have like their people, but like you're right, they basically all train by themselves, but referring to other people that are coached by the same person or to their coach.
So I'll attribute it to is like this meant like 1612, right? We surrounded ourselves with like-minded people. I can't suggest it enough to find the lifters in your community and to go learn from them, because I mean, I don't go up to people in the gym and offer my help, but if someone were to ask for my help, I would give it to them for free. I would give someone an hour of my time. And they're like, hey, could you help me with my squat? And I wouldn't even charge them. And I can't express how instrumental like it was for me to be surrounded by the guys at Elite FTS to like help me with my training, not only to help me with my eye and my programming, but just the intensity of being around like-minded people. I mean, look at 1612. Just this like-minded group. It's the same for training, but I really feel like training has to happen in person, because it's just a different vibe when you step into the gym with your crew. I remember interviewing one of the guys from Westside. He said the intention was to kill the other guy in training, whether it was weight, in reps, putting more bands on. Their goal was to hurt each other. Now, whether that's what you're into, that's on you. But like your training partners, I really feel is really important. I know we're in different age with things, but like that human interaction. That's why we do the meetups for 1612, right? So find a training group or go somewhere once a week and get in that environment. I think will help with any hesitation to help you with your strength.
Also why I built an in-person powerlifting team.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and it's different, right? It's just a different vibe than online. Like in person, man, it's just a different energy with you have a bunch of people screaming, yelling. And you also have spotters. I don't know, you tend to lift heavier or push harder when you have someone on a back squat. You're taking a PR attempt, you know you got someone there if you fail. But also have a coach who's not going to put you in a position to fail. Although I do purposely have some of my athletes fail because I know they're going to fail, but it builds confidence. Like it helps them learn, hey, why did you fail? What happened in that lift? Why did your technique break down? All right. So this question said weekly PR progression through weekly overload versus slower progression through increasing weight after a set of reps becomes easier over time. Not sure I understand the context of the question. So like, it depends on where you're at in your lifting career. If you're a newer lifter, I always push people to 5-3-1 or even juggernauts. They do 10, 8s, 5s, 3s, I think, I remember. But they do rep PRs every week to help build a base of strength. And then they cycle it out every 3 weeks. I know in 5-3-1, it's 3 weeks, then they take a deload and then another 3 weeks. So everything's overload. No matter what training principles you follow is overload. Even conjugate and concurrent, there is overload principles, as much as people want to argue about that. There's linear and everything. So find your wins where you can, but understand that progressions aren't linear. You're like getting strong isn't linear. It's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of the human body. But it should always be slow. Strength is a long game. Like the guys competing at the highest level, they've put their time in. They right, Sean? I don't know. Your dude Dom, right? He's probably been doing this for a minute or no?
Powerlifting specifically, like 3 years, but football, track, college football, track athlete, done like always like strength, like been in a gym for 20 years.
Yeah. So I mean, that's 20, he's got a base, right? And I feel like a lot of guys that I've worked with, they come in, guys, girls, whatever, they come into the sport and they're brand new and they're expecting to see these huge gains. Whereas like, I've been lifting since I was 10. So that's 26 years I've been training for weights, right? Like the shit doesn't happen. Again, you're trying to convince your body to do something that isn't natural. Your body has one concern, and that's survival. So all of its resources goes towards survival, which is why we have to eat in a calorie surplus, because once we meet our basic needs, then we can put it towards, this is where inflammation comes in. When we train, we cause injury, inflammation happens, it sends the immune system and supplies to help repair the damaged muscle tissue, nerves, the endocrine system. But you got to play the long game, and you have to be patient. And I feel a lot of people that new to powerlifting aren't patient. Like there's a lot of new guy lifters who they'll push injury, they'll push drugs at the expense of like health and longevity, chasing a number. So we talk about PRs. Why are we chasing the PR? Why is that PR important to you? It's kind of why I stopped.
If you think,
go ahead.
If you think powerlifters are bad, you should go hang out with some weightlifters.
Yeah, I never coached. I just had amateurs. Never had people that took weightlifting serious.
Yeah, they're even more extreme on the pushing for PR thing.
Yeah.
But then also it's the same group that they're like, oh, I don't really want to squat that heavy or pull that heavy. It's like, all right, guys, you can't have both.
Hey, I want to get strong, but I don't want to lift heavy. Yeah, Paul, I mean, the strength game's a long game, man. And you just got to have to, Okay, so this is where I had this conversation today. I think power lifters are the worst because they literally play their sport year round. And I don't know if I'm the anomaly. This has never caught on for me as a coach the last 5 years, except for with my lifters. And I'm not saying this is you, Paul, but your sport, your competition is powerlifting. It's those three it's a straight bar, squat, bench, and deadlift. Then what does your off season look like? Squat, bench, and deadlift with a straight bar. Football players don't play football typically year round, right? They have an off season. And I think if more lifters had an actual off season, their strength numbers would go up quicker than they realize. But what they do is they start to hammer in on their deadlift. But understand, if you have weak points in your deadlift and you keep the same technique and you don't do anything else, your body's just going to keep finding the easiest way to do it. You get strong in the positions you train. So let's say like our left erector is tighter than the right, and you keep pulling in that same position but never address the right erector, we can then lead to injuries. The long game is like, what are you looking to get out of the sport, and are you willing to pay the price to get those numbers? I knew for me it wasn't. My being able to play with my kid was more important. My kid that wasn't even here yet was more important than a PR. My injuries started to slowly rack up, but I think powerlifters need to just kind of take some time away from the barbell and treat themselves like humans and actually move their bodies. Unless you get to an elite level, that's a whole different conversation that we can have at a different time. But most of the lifters out there, you're not elite lifters. So just play the long game because you have nothing to lose. But I get it. I've been there. I think Hanse can throw into that. He's been there. Sean, you've been there. I understand it. But this is just an old timer passing on lessons to the youngins. But sometimes you have to learn the hard way.
Old timer.
Hey,
Not even old.
26 years of lifting, man. It's a long time.
Well, I didn't say you weren't experienced. I just said you weren't old.
Oh, okay. So yeah, man, Paul, it's a long game. Just be patient and just keep chipping away. Don't get frustrated. Sometimes, reach out to Sean or I with your lifting and like just a fresh approach or a fresh set of eyes, or like I said, text me on Discord and like, let's talk programming. What's your programming look like? You just might need to change things up a little bit. Sean, you answered this question in the Discord. It was about like, and Johans, maybe you can add into it. I've never worked with bodybuilders, but I just know from lifting, like just bringing symmetry up, it's going to come down to volume and intensity. Like, the unilateral work should be the main component of most bodybuilders. You're in a symmetrical sport. So I think, Sean, you had a great answer. Is just start with the weak side first. I think you said that.
Yep.
Yeah. And just, I would throw in some, like maybe some stuff in the beginning or at the end. You can add in extra reps, more. It needs more volume. You have to give it a reason to grow. You have to convince it that, hey, I need you to grow. So you need to pay more attention to it, but not to the point where like you're causing injury or like you have a bad relationship with it. But yeah, like if you want to throw in some more volume on like the right side compared to the left, because you need to bring the right, weak side first, extra sets. Johannes, would you do like extra sets just for the weak side? I've never worked with bodybuilders. It's not my. But yeah, I would just say it needs more volume. You just need to convince it to grow. And if it's lagging, you haven't convinced it that it needs to grow, and the body's like, yeah, we're good. Because you have to remember, like as humans, we are asymmetrical by nature. It's just we are. You have to think. Let's think of how our organs are structured. Like one lung is bigger than the other. The liver's on the right side. The stomach's on the other. The heart's kind of in the middle, off to the left. Like we're asymmetrical creatures. We're right-handed compared to left-handed, or vice versa. So you're gonna have sides that are bigger. So for me, I'm 36. My right side is bigger in some aspects. My left side is bigger in certain parts because of just how my body's used. Walking around is an asymmetrical, unilateral type motion. All human movements unilateral, but when we go step on stage for bodybuilding, everything is bilateral and symmetrical. So if I'm 36 years of movement, I have to be patient and play the long game to give my left, because I'm right-handed, my left bicep, for instance, I have to give it time to catch up to the right. So yes, I think Sean Johansson and I are all in agreement. Like, just it needs more sets. It need hit the weak side first, get extra sets in, and then just hit some extra volume on that weak side on whatever day you're training. I think she was talking about her right glute. That's the other thing. The hip is a very complex muscle, right? So there's 3 layers of glutes, and then there's like 11 other muscles behind it. So are we actually training the glute and getting it strong and shaping it through its full ranges of motion? See, I've never worked with bodybuilders, but those are the questions that are going through my head: is the hip strong, and is it, big in its full ranges? Because you have to hit different poses. But the glutes are 3 layers, so you have to understand how the glutes, all 3 layers, work, and then train accordingly, would be my guess. Sean, you got anything to add?
No, I basically hits the nail on the head.
Yeah. Anybody got any questions? That's it from the Discord that I got.
What kind of glute pain? Sorry,
Huh?
I read that. Paul asked tips for glute pain on sumo.
Oh,
what kind of pain?
Yeah, that's a.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, like you were saying, I've switched over to, because my conventional's just gone to hell since my last meeting in March. So we've switched over to sumo, thinking, might be glutes or, because it's normally off the floor that I'm having the issues. And so we switched over to sumo, and I don't know if it's maybe my foot placement that's causing it, but I'm getting a sharp pain on the outside of my glutes at lockout. And I mean, it starts at 225 up. So
that's your body. Let's think about this, right? Your body's having a conversation with you. Like, obviously we have to look at injury history. I got to see how you lift, but just thought process, is it more towards the outside of the hip or inside the hip?
Outside.
Okay. Do you have it in any other movements, or just as it with sumo?
It's just sumo. No, that's a lie. Actually, once I start getting into probably 90% on my squats, if I'm not careful, if I'm not paying attention to my form as I'm coming out of the hole, I notice my left side dips and the right side starts to come up more. And I'm wondering if that, could just be like my chest placement or my elbows, but I'll get glute pain coming out of the hole as well. Not as prevalent as I do on my sumos though.
Right. So it sounds like it's during like hip extension. You're trying to lock out your squat or your deadlift. All right. So how long have you been powerlifting?
So this will be 4 years now.
Any injuries into the ankle, low back, or hip itself, or even the knee?
Yeah, I have reconstructive surgery on my right ankle.
Okay.
So I've been battling, I guess, balance and stuff for years.
What do you do for work? Are you on your feet all day, or do you sit?
On my feet most of the day. I do water treatment and basically valve replacement, fire hydrant, stuff like that.
How long ago was the ankle injury?
12 years ago now.
You said 4 years?
12.
12. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Sean and everybody in here, you can kind of see how this is how I work with people, in-person clients, is I got to paint this picture of what the hip's just trying to tell me something, right? So it's a very glute pain during sumo is a very vague thing for me. Like, I don't know what's going on. How much did your gait change from that right ankle injury that you're now on your feet all day that things have had to adjust, right? Why is the left side coming up first in the squat as opposed to the right? Why doesn't the body trust? So I had a very bad ankle injury. So for some reason, maybe the mind doesn't trust that right ankle, and for a while has been pushing things over to the left side to avoid, it's just a brain hip connection. Right. So I don't know. Tips. I don't know. Like, my first question is, I would take a break from the things that bother it I would probably do a ton of unilateral work, even like lifting. I wish lifters would see the value in lifting heavy. I'm talking 2 to 5 reps with single leg work, with single arm work to help balance. So we talked about asymmetries in bodybuilding. It's the same thing with powerlifting. Like, for some reason, we don't do heavy unilateral work in powerlifting. We do like higher reps, but powerlifting is a strength-based sport. So like, you know, I would take time and do some heavy split squats, some heavy split deadlifts, just more heavy unilateral work to kind of balance things out. But then I would also add a movement practice in to ensure that we have full range of motion in that ankle on the right side. So if you had reconstructive surgery, like that's a pretty traumatic injury where the brain might not trust that right side.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% correct with that. You know, I do favor the left a little bit more, especially when it comes to leg accessories and things like that. I can tell the left is a lot stronger.
Yeah, so like, and then the left side might be tighter, right? Is it pulling the right side to the left side? You know, I don't know. I'd have to watch you lift, but to me, like your body's just like, yo, like even if you're starting to get pain in weights that are usually light, it's time to back that down and take some time off. Doesn't mean you can't lift. We just got to find movements that don't cause pain. You know, I don't, for some reason, the ankle injury standing out. So like, we got to strengthen the fuck out of that ankle and that right hip, because maybe for such a long time, you've been pushing everything to the left. So if you're on your feet every day and most of your steps are to avoid the right side because your brain doesn't trust it, we got to build some trust with that right ankle and that hip. Because here's the thing, you have to remember, you're a human first. Like, so do you have access to the ranges of motion that are human, right? Does your hip, knee, ankle, low back, pelvis, do we have control over those things? Do we have access to those things? You know, that's what we would do. Like, you know, you could do those, right? How's the hip and all that shit have to move, and then like move those. Here's the thing, like you should move all your joints daily for your age for reps. If it's injured, you need to like multiply that times like 5. So if you're 30, you gotta like, that's how many times you should. So we have to get this brain to be like, I feel safe on my ankle. I feel safe in this hip, and just hammer that shit unilaterally. Yeah, Hansei said my total went through the roof when I started adding unilateral stuff in. I would take some time and I would take some time away from the main movements of the barbell, because powerlifting is a bilateral symmetrical sport. Life is a unilateral asymmetrical sport. So spend time doing unilateral asymmetrical work in the gym.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Those are all my tips. And then I got to see how you move. So if you know, some simple movement screens, seeing what your deadlift is doing, or, you know, a video of your squat and deadlift head on from the side, that'll kind of just give me a little bit of a better idea.
Yeah, I'll shoot you guys some videos over.
Yeah, cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, powerlifting, you got to play the long game, man. Like you guys powerlifters need a fucking off season, and it's the one sport where they don't take one, and they don't listen to anybody. I think lifters stopped taking me seriously when I stopped lifting heavy. I don't know. You don't lift heavy anymore, bro. Like, why should I listen to you?
It's been a while. I definitely could use one.
Yeah, take some, like, listen to your body, like take some time. So strength has a residual capacity of like 4 to 6 weeks. So you're not going to lose that much strength if you take them 3 to 6 weeks off. You take some time away, go like on a bike, like find some other interest outside the gym to kind of give yourself a refresh. I have the human movement guide that I designed for the 1612 group. I'll post it again. You know, do those movements every day, see where you struggle, double down on the ones you just struggle, go find some other things and take some time away, and then slowly start to come back. I don't know if you have a coach, but work with your coach.
Yeah, I got it covered.
Cool. Anybody got any questions? Anything? Training, programming, recovery? Yeah. All right. Well, appreciate everybody being here. I want to talk about diet. So there's this thing with carbs and fat. I saw this in the group discussion about inflammation, and people are like, I'm on a low carb diet. So if we're going to look at diet for performance, we have to look at what carbs and fat are doing. So if we turn back to the talk on like energy systems, and we have to remember aerobic systems favor fat. They run better on fat. Our body can hold like a surplus of calories in fat, which is why we have an obesity epidemic. We can only hold about 2,000 calories in carbs. So it's going to be dependent on the sport and or your goals if you're looking at nutrition for like a performance aspect. Because your anaerobic systems or your short duration systems are going to require carbs to function at the level that they need to. So in regards to inflammation, yes, again, you want to get single sourced fat, single sourced carb, or single ingredients, sorry. And you just have to listen to your body. But if we're looking at performance, we have to look at what the sport is to determine if you should be more fat-based and or carb-based, or a mix of both, or, you know, leaning one or the other. So everything works together, right? So if I have shitty carbs, it's going to affect the system as a whole. If I have shitty fats, it affects the system as a whole. And if you feel like shit after you eat it, that's your body telling you like, yo, maybe we shouldn't eat this all the time. It's okay to have it once in a while, but if you feel like crap after, it's your body saying, yo, we don't work. Yo, Hans. Or is that accident?
I was just going to say, one of the things that I really notice is people don't know when they feel like shit. So when we say that, I think we have to like really nail home like the fact that they have to spend time with that food afterwards. Because guys just scarf down food, right? They just eat it, throw it down their gullet, and it's over. And then they were like, oh, I this is just how I feel. Or they've felt like this for so long, they don't know that it's bad. And, you know, that's what I witnessed, you know, firsthand with a group of guys. Like they didn't know what feeling good was. They didn't know what a right shit looked like or felt like, right? These are like real conditions and issues that guys have. They have no idea that they're not supposed to feel a certain way.
So how do you go about getting someone to be on the same page with like their food? And
I think one is slowing down, and I hate to say it. I think elimination diets are good for that reason only. Not to be on an elimination diet for like, you know, weight loss, but like if you take something out and all of a sudden you feel good, you're like, oh, okay, that probably shouldn't go back in. You know, but for me, it's been slowing down. It's how I recognize that, like, oh, red sauces and I don't do well. You know, the cookies from 7-Eleven that I love, we're not friends. You know, so those are the things. Because normally I just eat them and I didn't realize it, but especially after this bodybuilding show, I had the cookies and I was like, yo, like I feel terrible now.
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's the same with like I did that with energy drinks. Being a strength coach, Sean, I think you can relate to this. Like we just pound monsters all day, and then I took like a couple months off of Monster, and then had one. Like I could barely get through like a quarter of it. Just my body was like, it was really disgusting. Yeah. So I guess that's looking at behavior habits. What are you consuming a lot of, and then maybe taking a break from it. So I forgot who I was talking to, but like even like caffeine, like. Sometimes you just need to take a break from the thing. So if you're drinking a lot of caffeine, like take a break for a week or two so your body can actually learn how to function without it, and then slowly introduce it again.
You're saying don't do 800 milligrams caffeine before 8 a.m.?
You can do whatever you want, man, but understand that there is...
Oh, that's not a me thing. That's someone else in the group. Hanze.
There's consequences to that. I'm not saying it might have an effect on people's sleep, right? So that's what people do. They'll be like, I'll drink caffeine all day and then I'll slam melatonin at night, and then the half-life of caffeine and melatonin get in this weird fight, and they're like, I can't figure out why I can't sleep.
Listen, you guys leave caffeine alone. It's never hurt anyone.
Hey, we all have our vices.
Side note for the people who are powerlifting, like if you do like caffeine, I highly recommend like coming off your caffeine for about the first, or not first, but 2 weeks prior to your meet, and then super dosing it for your meet. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I do that for weightlifting.
Michael Pollan has a whole section in his book about drugs about caffeine. He talks about being off of caffeine for about 120 days and then having a super dose of caffeine and it being like a psychedelic effect as well. So
I might have to try that.
yeah.
Wait, what's considered a super dose?
What we do or what I do.
Okay. Oh, you do.
All right, but that's all I got.
All right, fellas. Appreciate you for hopping on. If nobody has anything, until next week. If you have any questions though or topics you want to see discussed, drop it in the Discord. Otherwise, we'll return to our regular schedule next week. All right,
Have a
guys.
good one.
We'll talk. Thank you. Appreciate you.